purchased a copy of Lessons in Chemistry, you can do so this afternoon or this evening, depending on where you are, via the links to your favorite participating bookstore, which we will have on our website and we'll share in the chat window later on. FYI, we do have a limited number of autographed copies on hand, so if you want one of those, now's the time to act. And if you have, of course, already bought a book when you registered for this event, thank you very much. That's how we make this all work. We are recording the event, and the conversation will be viewable later on our Books in Common NW YouTube channel. So watch it again later or tell your friends about it. If you are watching on Zoom, we would love to get questions from you for our authors. Please use the Q&A button, and we will get to those at the end of the program as time allows. You can also leave comments at any time using the chat function. Standard disclaimers: if you run into technical issues, usually leaving the Zoom conversation and coming back in will take care of those. But using headphones usually resolves any sound issues that you might be having. We do always remind you that this is a shared creative space that we want to remain safe for everyone. So we ask, and in fact require, that you be respectful of everyone who's joined us tonight. Any offensive or inappropriate comments will see the user or commenter dismissed from the space. I acknowledge that I am speaking to you today from Seattle, Washington, a city built on the unceded territory of the Duwamish people. You can learn about their efforts to achieve federal recognition for their tribe at realrentduwamish.org. So having said all those things, I should introduce our special guests here today. First, Claire Lombardo. She is a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop and author of the New York Times bestselling novel, The Most Fun We Ever Had. She teaches at Grinnell College, alma mater to at least 2 former Seattle booksellers of my acquaintance. So, you know, they grow more than corn and pigs in Iowa. Bonnie Garmus is a copywriter and creative director who has worked widely in the fields of technology, medicine, and education. An open water swimmer, a rower, and mother to 2 amazing daughters. Her debut novel is Lessons in Chemistry. She is currently, let's say, an occasional resident of Seattle, now living in London, generally speaking, with her husband and her dog, 99. So without further ado, I'll take my leave for a little bit, and I'll let these 2 authors take it away. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Bonnie. Congratulations, first of all. And it's so fun to be here with you.
Mutual. I mean, I was really excited when this got arranged. I thought, wow. I mean, because I love your writing, so I'm a little bit awestruck.
Likewise. We can be awestruck together.
Okay.
Should I just dive in? I have a lot of things I want to ask you about.
Oh yeah, ask away.
So I want to ask you a lot of sort of crafty how you did it questions, but can you tell us first just sort of where this book came from, you know, what the start was and how you kind of took it from there to here?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was just a really bad day at work. I'd been in a meeting and I'd been presenting some ideas for a campaign, and the meeting was all men. It was in technology, that's not that uncommon. And people kind of went, yeah, that's fine. And then about 5 minutes later, a man reiterated everything that I just said, but he claimed full credit for it. And I said, you know, I just said all of that, and these are actually my ideas. And he said, no. Anyway, I left the meeting and I was really angry. But I went back to my desk, and instead of working, I wrote the first chapter of Lessons in Chemistry. But Elizabeth Zott, I felt like she was sitting there at that time, and I could hear what she was saying. And what she said to me that day was, I know that you've had a bad day, but mine has been so much worse. And it was great. It was great to hear that voice all of a sudden. She wasn't fully formed or anything, but she was just there.
So she came to you as a sort of disembodied voice and then wouldn't leave you alone. I didn't know I meant that enough.
I know. It sounds very mystical. Actually, though, she had been a minor character in a novel that I'd started and shelved like probably 12 years earlier. And
Oh,
suddenly there she was. And she was so minor in that novel. I only knew a few things about her. So sitting there, I really only knew that she was a chemist. She was both sad and mad, and she was teaching a cooking show, but I didn't know anything else.
and so how do you go about getting to know your characters? Is it just a matter of spending a lot of time with them, or how did you kind of, become so well acquainted with her?
Well, I don't know how you work. I don't write from an outline. I really envy people who do. Oh, you don't either? Okay, thank God.
I also envy people who do, but I do not.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. Because it sounds a little bit crazy, but I just allow characters to kind of walk on, and then I try to put them in a situation and watch them flounder or whatever. And that's how I started this book. I knew a little bit about Madeline because she had been one of the main characters in the book that I'd shelved. So I knew her as an adult, but not as a child.
Ooh.
But I didn't know anybody else. So I had this idea that she would be teaching, Elizabeth Zott would be teaching a cooking show. And I had this idea that she would hate it. And I thought that would be really interesting because I think most people would kill to host a cooking show. Probably not me, but a lot of people would. And so, to have her do it and then turn it into a science show would be a lot of really good tension to begin with. But in terms of the other characters, I just let them kind of walk on, and then I that's how I develop them. And that's why there are so many points of view in this book. There are 10, I think, and they're all there to round out Elizabeth's Zott.
And was that hard to manage, like having that many voices that you had to sort of navigate around? I would imagine it's hard to not only develop them, but then have them keep popping up.
Well, it was really funny. I don't know if you have this experience, but do you have this experience where some characters just demand attention? Like, I want to talk now. It's my turn.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You're kind of like, oh, you can't tell very many people that because it does sound like you live in this imaginary world, and you do. You do. So yeah, I really enjoyed. I knew that she would have a boss at Hastings. I knew that she would have a boss at the TV show, and I knew that she would have a dog. I didn't know that the dog would have thoughts, for instance. I didn't know any of that. So it all just kind of comes up and bubbles up. And I tend to go down lots of pathways, and some are dead ends and some aren't. So I just have to explore as I go along.
And who was the easiest character to write and who was the hardest? By which I mean, I guess the most enjoyable and the least enjoyable for you.
I loved writing Elizabeth, of course, but I loved writing 6:30 the dog.
Yeah.
I actually loved writing every character. One of my favorite chapters, this is going to sound weird, is the chapter written from the management point of view at Hastings Research Institute, because they're not very good people, these managers, and they're disembodied. We don't even know their names, but it's just sort of this management speak about what they actually care about, worry about, as opposed to what their employees are working on. And for me, that was really fun to write. But the least enjoyable character was Dr. Myers, the professor at UCLA. I really didn't like being with him in my head. I really wasn't happy. But yeah, the other characters were actually all pretty fun.
Yeah. I feel like this is a book that, and I mean this is a very high compliment, you can tell the writer's having fun when you're reading it because you're having fun as a reader. There's that sort of nice complicity. Yeah.
Oh,
and when
I appreciate that.
Oh no, I appreciate it. When you have things that you don't like, that you're avoiding writing about, that that you need to, do you avoid them, or are you someone who sort of plows on and actually does do you do what you're supposed to, or are you a procrastinator? I guess is really.
I'm really good at avoiding. I'm a big avoider.
Well, me too.
It's amazing we get anything done, Claire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. there were certain scenes I knew I had to write, and certain, backstories or information that I knew I had to write. Some of the backstories came so easily, like Harriet's backstory came very easily, but the other backstories did not. Oh, and 630's backstory came very easily, but the other backstories did not. And so I would kind of say, well, almost like leaving a box, more stuff to come here. It's not, yeah. But sometimes I would just write straight through. I would try to write scene to scene to scene to scene.
For the whole book?
Yep.
That was a big question I had, because this is such a carefully plotted book, which again speaks to the writer behind it. Plot is really difficult and it feels so seamless. And when you get to the end, you have that sort of like surprising and inevitable, like, of course that happened, but I'm also really surprised that it happened, which is like such a great feeling. So I was wondering, are you a straight through writer or a piecer together? But you are a straight through writer. So did you know the end of the book when you started?
Well, I knew the last 4 sentences, and that's all I knew. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's the last 3 sentences. That's all I knew. But I didn't know anything else. And so, I just had to write the whole middle. So from the first 5 pages, and then I had the last 4 sentences. And I had ideas of what I thought could happen. But then once I started writing, the characters really take over. And I love that part of it. I think that's the best part for writing for me, because I don't know about you, but I think writing is really, really difficult. The craft of it is really hard. The craft is probably the most important thing to me in writing. I really care about the transition from sentence to sentence, and I don't want to lose a reader. And then I'm throwing in all these points of views, and I'm breaking some rules, like you're not supposed to have 2 points of view in, 1 chapter or 1 page. Well, I'll do that. I throw those in, and I just keep thinking, as long as I trust myself and I feel confident in what I'm doing, it'll work. But, once I finished the entire book and I sent it to my agent, she goes, okay, so your time shifting here, it's a little lumpy. And so that was really helpful, because, she said, I don't see this going to this, to this, to this. And she wanted me to bring in more of the child, more of Madeline. And so those were all really good suggestions. But I kind of write scene to scene to scene. And then sometimes, though, like she suggested one scene, which I wrote. And then after I wrote it, I deleted it 2 drafts later. I went, no, this chapter's got to go. We don't need it. We really don't need this backstory. So stuff like that, it's kind of this flexible rubber band sort of thing. But it was hard because, as you know, you make a change in a novel on page 232. It's like you pulled a thread, and now you've got to go back and do all this repair work. Yeah. And it's every time there was a change, I go, oh my God, I have to go re-sew the whole thing.
Right.
It's really, that part is, I think plotters maybe don't have that problem. They're better at it than, they understand, they know where everything lies. So I did have an ongoing timeline, and it's a huge spreadsheet that changed all the time, that just said, now it's 1961, it's morning, whatever. But, that was really for the editors or copy editors who might have to grapple with what I had done.
Did you have any? I had a very similar and very scary spreadsheet. And then we share beloved editor Lee Boudreau at Doubleday. I wonder if we had the same copy editor. Did you have the mystical experience of having a copy editor go through? And what was the wildest thing, if you can recall, that person discovered in sort of?
Yeah, I remember. She said, you can't wait. What was I referred to a television show. This was about halfway through the book. And she said, the only problem is the book right now is in July, and this show debuted September 1st. And I went, oh, come on. No one's going to know that.
Give me this one.
Just let me slide on this one. But she was really good. She was really, really complete. And I really appreciated the work that she did. It's a hard job,
It's
being a
incredible.
copy editor. Yeah. I mean, I felt like this isn't any way dismissive of her work. It's the nicest compliment I can give her. It's like having your house really thoroughly cleaned, it was like someone's really going to vacuum under the bed after all, it was
Right.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
like come back anytime.
Right.
And I just thought, wow, I actually think I think just her little suggestions of, oh, you said you used, I don't know, murmured twice on the same page. Do you want to change one? I thought, I never saw that. I
Right.
loved that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, I feel like once you've taken the time to write a book, let alone then, are working on it with your agent and then your editor, like you can't have perspective on it, and you can't have perspective on the even, I feel like you just sort of, your eyes glaze over the repeated words and the, whatever, so many errors that
I know all those typos. No, I meant to have all of those typos in there.
Right.
I can't believe, no, here's another typo. How is that possible?
Right.
But yeah, no, they're just such an eagle eye. I think honestly, the copy edit might have been my favorite part, because it just felt good, to have this person checking my work. I'd already had some science editors, scientists look at the science to check that, and that was easy. But the copy edit, it was just like sit back and they're running a vacuum.
Right. A magical vacuum.
I know.
Yeah.
It was pretty nice. Yeah.
Cool. And what did the actual editing of the book look like? Was that, extensive? Was it, well, first of all, sorry, how long did it take you to write the book? And then how long did it take you to edit the book?
So it took me 5 years to write the book.
Okay.
And then Felicity Blunt is my agent. And she and I worked on it for almost a year and a half. It was partly during COVID. But it sounds like a long time, but you probably know, if you send something to your agent or your editor, you might not see it for 4 or 5 months.
Sure.
Yeah. You go, there it goes. You kind of, I hope it boomerangs back here. And you realize, they're reading so many things. They have so much on their plate, and then they have to spend all this time on your novel, and they're juggling all these books.
Yeah.
So I did that with Felicity. Then we went to Frankfurt Book Fair, and then I worked with Jane Lawson at UK Doubleday, it's Transworld, and then also Lee Boudreau at Doubleday. And it was really funny because did you have just Lee, or did you have 2 editors?
No, I had just Lee.
Just Lee. So I had 2 editors, and I thought, I wonder how this is going to go. But it's really interesting to see what each one kind of picked up on. Now, both with Felicity and Jane and Lee, there were plenty of times I'd say, I'm not taking your suggestion. Don't be mad at me.
Sure.
But I'm not doing that. So I have to say, with Jane and Lee, we only went through 2 drafts.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward, to be honest. And then I got that copy editor, and I just felt like I was sitting in a Barco lounger. It was great. I mean, I loved her, and I really, really appreciated her eagle eye.
Yeah. I just had a question related to that, and I completely forgot what it was. I'll just look at my list, I guess. It was related, and I lost it. So I'll ask you a question that has been on completely unrelated. Talk to me about dogs in this novel, in your life, any dogs in any capacity.
Okay. Well, I've always been a dog person. And when I was a little kid, I begged to get this neighbor dog. The neighbor dog had a litter, a bunch of mutts. And I begged my parents to let me have a dog. It turned out the reason we didn't have a dog was because some doctor told them that I was allergic. And I did have rashes and things, but I don't know. Anyway, I convinced my parents to let us have this dog. And that dog lived to be, the dog was not small. It's like 50 pounds. And he lived 19 years.
Oh, wow.
Because I know my parents fed him ice cream every night. And so they always said, well, because he'll have something to live for. So he hung around a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the secret. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then my then boyfriend, now husband, and I adopted 2 dogs from the pound, and they were, we called them the boys. They were Barney and Astro, and they were fantastic. Really odd, but they were both fantastic. And then they died at a normal age, 15. And then my kids selected a dog from a shelter, and she was really in bad shape. But they insisted that they wanted to bring this dog home.
Yeah.
And she was in such bad shape that she had cigarette burns all over her back. And she had horrible mange, and she didn't have any teeth on the bottom. So we brought her home thinking, and she had a very peculiar odor, but they said it was the mange medicine. Well, they lied. Yeah, that was just how she
it was just part of who she was.
Yeah, she was. People used to comment on it, like, go, "Oh, your dog smells really bad. You should give her a bath." I just did. But she turned out to be. We always think of her as Gandhi, because she was so smart, and that is who 630 is based on.
Okay.
So 630 is the only character who actually is tied to someone in real life, and that is to Friday, who was so much smarter than we ever gave her credit for until really the very end. But she knew a lot of words, and it wasn't like we were teaching her words. She just listened to us all the time. And then I realized one day when I said aloud, I can't find my keys. I've got to go, and I can't find my keys. I watched her take off, and she went and searched all my bags, and then she searched pockets of jackets until she found the keys and dropped them on the floor. And I went, oh my God. You know, you kind of want to ask your dog, what about lottery numbers, or something like that. Is there anything else you can do?
What else can you do for me?
Yeah. I mean, is there anything else you would recommend? But we moved abroad, and we moved to Switzerland. We were transferred there, and we brought her along, of course. And in Switzerland, dogs have to take tests, and you have to have good dog manners in Switzerland. Your dog has to be very well behaved off lead all the time, 100% of the time. Okay. And the test is quite hard, which is how the Swiss are. And you don't see unruly dogs in Switzerland, And so my dog had to take the test, but it was in German, and she passed. She got 100%.
Oh my God.
And we realized maybe the dogs were teaching her German or something. We were speaking German by that time, but she was able to do this test, and she passed it. And the test is hard. I mean, they leave the dog on the street, and the dog can't move. They leave the dog in front of a grocery store. They take the dog up into the hills, where there are deer, and see if it will. It is hard.
This is insane. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then you get a dog passport. It means you can go anywhere in Europe because you've been certified as a Swiss dog.
Okay. I did not know any of that.
Yeah, it was out there, but she did super well. And that's when we realized, okay, we're living with somebody who is so much smarter than we've ever given her credit for. Yeah. And she was just devoted to us. So she was just fantastic. Anyway, so that's how 630 came to life in the book.
Wow.
I kind of imagined what Friday was actually thinking about us.
And was he a character in the novel from the jump, or did you always know he was going to be there? You said you didn't know he was going to have a voice earlier. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I was pretty sure I'd have a dog in a book, because I don't know about you, but I like dogs in books. And so, yeah, I really, to me, it's really important. I think a dog kind of rounds out a character because of how they interact with the dog. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that there would be a dog, but I could not believe because I knew I'd get in trouble for this when I typed in what he was thinking. And I thought, oh, I don't know if I should go down this road. And then I could not resist. So it was, my agent wasn't a huge fan of the dog. She doesn't like that kind of magical realism coming into the book. And my feeling was, and I tried to present it this way, that the dog is an anthropologist, and we live with animals all the time. They obviously have thoughts about us.
Mm.
And I don't think it's so far-fetched to think that a dog would be commenting on what we're like and how much we lie, compared to what they do in their species. Especially because, and I always think of this, 10 years ago, we never imagined that trees communicate with each other. So
Sure.
yeah, so I thought, no, I don't even think this is magical realism. I think there was a dog named Casper, who was a border collie and knew over 1,000 words, and he was written up in the New York Times. So I found that article and I sent it to my agent. She was like, okay. Anyway, she was great about the whole thing, but we did have to kind of, she wasn't really happy with the dog at first. So yeah, I think that was really the only battle that was kind of dear to me, that I really felt like I had to win that one.
Yeah. You just reminded me what my other question was, which is, were there any battles that you lost that you still like darlings you had to kill that you wish you hadn't?
I did lose one battle, which I still think I should have presented it in a different way. So maybe it's my fault if I lost the battle. First of all, I was trying to do these different story arcs within the book, and one of the arcs is that Elizabeth Zott has she becomes a catalyst for change first on a local level, and then on a national level, and the third one was on an international level. And that chapter was so dear to me. In the history of the book, the Cuban Missile Crisis happens, and Jack Kennedy is talking to the nation on TV, and Jackie Kennedy says, "You need to have Elizabeth Zott address the nation." And so she does. And she tells everybody, not so much, not to be afraid. She tells them how to prepare, what to do in their homes, what they need to have now, where they should go now, what chemicals they need, it's very much Elizabeth Zott. And with her little commentary through the whole thing of course you would have this and blah, blah, blah. And all these women at home have been watching her for such a long time that they are so prepared. They are ready for this attack. Mm-hmm. And I love that. And then at the very end, she addresses Khrushchev on her own. Mm-hmm. She just turns to the camera and says, "I would turn back if I were you, because we're Americans." And she explains that Americans don't really like each other all that much, but by God, we're Americans and we're not going to put up with this. Yeah. And anyway, I lost that one. I thought it was a great chapter.
I'm sorry.
And I think now, with Putin, I think, oh, it's really good timing, but they felt like it was too political. And that's where I think I failed in my argument, because I think the book is very political. Absolutely. So I don't see why having that in would be a problem, but it's not there.
You just told us about it, so we got it in some capacity.
Well,
so
I'll send it to anyone who wants it.
Like bonus content. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh.
Interesting. What else did I want to ask you? Can you talk a little bit about, so you are a copywriter and a creative director, is that right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that work influences or doesn't? I mean, you spoke of a specific incident at the beginning, but can you talk about how just your day job interacts with your life as a writer?
Well, it's so funny because I think most people don't really understand what copywriters do. And we do everything, we write campaigns, or we write just taglines or concepts, but we also write speeches. We do a lot of really different things. And the thing is, with copywriting, you never write what you know. So I'm used to never, how they always tell you write what you know. Mm-hmm. I never write what I know. So that came naturally to me because I'm not a chemist, I'm not a single mom, and I don't like to cook. So there are all these things in my book. That's okay. But copywriting was it's like my, graduate school in how to write well. It's all about very careful sentences and transitions and constantly keeping your audience informed and entertained at the same time. Now, most of the pieces were a lot shorter than a novel.
Sure.
But with copywriting, if you bore your audience, no one is going to buy what you had to sell. And a lot of the things I worked on, some of them they weren't my favorite projects, but others of them, I know this sounds weird, but some people out in the world develop really, really interesting things. And they deserve to have their story told and their product sung. And I really love that part of it. From working with surgeons who were developing this new heart therapy and getting a chance to talk about that, but in sort of an entertaining, informative way. That was a skill that it's hard to get other places. So I felt I feel kind of lucky, even though I didn't always love my job. I feel kind of lucky that I was constantly honing the craft while I was getting paid for it.
Yeah. And I think it's so clear in this book. There are and you just answered another of my questions, which was like, do you have a background in chemistry? Do you have a background in all of these things that you you go so vibrantly into detail about? And you're, sort of teaching your reader by virtue of like you just said, telling us in a way that makes us want to keep reading. And I think, that just struck me so many times throughout this book of like, I'm fascinated by this. And this is something that I had rowing. I knew nothing about rowing, and I'm like reading it voraciously. So that's really interesting.
Well, rowing. Okay. That was the only thing I put in that I actually knew about. I'm a rower. Okay. And I added that for two reasons. One, because I had to teach myself chemistry using a 50s textbook. And then I had to, I sort of tried to cook. I mean, I cook, I just don't cook well. I'm not one of those people who would go, yeah, come over, I'll just whip something up. That would never happen. Sure. So I put in rowing though, because I wanted there to be this juxtaposition. A rowing boat only moves forward when everyone is working together, or actually it goes backwards, by the way, but it only goes backwards when people work together. The fastest boats are the boats where everyone is rowing exactly the same. And I wanted to have that in contrast to Elizabeth's workplace, where no one's cooperating at Hastings or even on the TV cooking show. And there's so much disruption. And rowing is all about balance and cooperation. And in her life, there was no cooperation and there was certainly no balance. So that's sort of why that was in, but also because I didn't want to research yet another thing.
You were an authority already.
Yeah, right. Sure. Sort of. Yeah.
Do you like to research? Is that something that you enjoy doing, or did it feel like work?
The chemistry felt a little bit like work, but parts of it were just fascinating because, you're probably like me, where you start to see connections from chemistry into parts of your novel or parts of your life. Sure. And that's what I suddenly realized. The more I got into chemistry, the more metaphors I saw. And it was great, but my chemical knowledge only goes up to 1963. And I had to force myself not to Google things, because if you do that, you're in the 21st century. Or you cannot do that, as you know, and you put a lot of acronyms in the book, and your copy editor is going to go on a rampage.
Yeah.
So I was really careful to keep it in that time frame, but that was quite a bit of work.
And you said you had one textbook that you were using. Where did you find it? Like where did it come
on eBay?
From? Oh, okay.
On eBay. Yeah. I mean, it was really cheap. It was, I would say it was a couple pounds, but it was, I think I bought it when we were living in Switzerland.
Okay.
So yeah. And then I think I had it shipped to our home in Seattle because I couldn't get it to Switzerland. And I was going there anyway, and I just picked it up when we were back in town. And it was great. I have to say, this textbook was written pretty simply and clearly. But I also use this other book, which I have over there somewhere, which is the Child's Encyclopedia of Chemistry Experiments. It's the golden book of chemistry.
Oh, okay.
And it's for children. And they don't print it anymore because children were injuring themselves.
Okay.
And so did I.
Sure.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Did you do
but
the experiments from the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the fire department did have to come.
Okay.
There's a part in the book near the beginning where I talk about, or Elizabeth is actually, not me, talking about how pistachios are very flammable. And I thought, to myself, really, how flammable could they be? They're highly flammable.
Okay.
Under a certain condition, you don't want to not have a fire extinguisher available. Yeah. I've learned my lesson.
I did not know.
On a few. Yeah. I mean, it's the way it's not like you have to worry about your cupboard spontaneously combusting or anything like that.
Sure,
but
sure.
if you do want to make something burn using pistachios, they go up pretty quick.
They're an accelerant.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. Who knew?
Okay. Interesting. All right. So this book deals with a lot of heavy things, and there's a lot of, historical injustice that's still incredibly relevant today. But I walked away from this book feeling so much joy and so much hope. Was that something that you were conscious of doing? Are you a naturally hopeful and optimistic person? How did that come through? Because it absolutely did for me.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. It was my intent to leave it on a hopeful note. But I think we all feel like things have just gone south for a very long time. We had Trump, then we had pandemic, now we have Ukraine, and it just feels like the world is, I don't know, it feels very chaotic and very depressing. And it was really important for me to make sure that her message was one of, determination and hope, one of courage, because I think it can get to the point now where some people might feel like giving up, or I don't know. So I did not want to go down that road. And I made her very rational because I wanted to contrast that to the irrationality we all face every day. And I just couldn't write a character, if she was going to be the protagonist, who wasn't going to be, rational to almost the extreme, or everything to her is about science and how it actually works. Everything's based on fact and evidence, and not there's, no, I'm not going to listen to your arguments about religion, and no, I'm not going to, follow your directions for this TV show. There's no logical sense to that. So she's, very, very opinionated, but it's all based on her findings, actual science. And I wanted to really somebody said this to me the other night in Cambridge. They said, thank you. There were a lot of chemists in the audience, and they said, thank you for not making chemistry the villain that it's always portrayed as in TV shows and stuff. It's always like, you're making meth or you're poisoning somebody or whatever. But really, chemistry is the very basis of life. It's what we all come from. And it's, we can, and then there are, of course, bombs and everything. So they said, cooking really is chemistry, and that's why she can teach a cooking show. But it is really the basis of life. And chemistry is all about change. And it always requires a catalyst. And Elizabeth Zott is a catalyst. But in fact, I think we are all catalysts. And we just have to have the courage to say no as often as she does, and to demand that we follow perhaps a more logical end to things, that we keep reaching for more scientific conclusions than depending on or hoping for a better future. You can't just hope. You can actually be part of that solution.
Absolutely. And we were talking before the actual talk started about the sort of international acclaim of this book. And I think what you're talking about speaks to the reason this book has been so popular among, not just in America and in the UK. It is this very sort of hopeful human story that I think a lot of people can read and walk away from feeling like there are things you can do. There are, it's not completely hopeless. So maybe that's
Yeah.
yeah.
I think all of us, I think I didn't know this when I was writing it. And, I'm not Elizabeth Zott. I'm not a lot like her, but I wrote her because I needed someone to look up to, and I needed to create that person. But writing it, I realized how many of us feel like she has felt, or, we've been denigrated, we've been passed over, we've been whatever. And that goes for men as well.
Sure.
And so she seems to be resonating with people on that level of, yes, she's faced horrible things in her life, and her life has had some really dark moments, but she just rises to the occasion every time, and she just decides you have to go forward.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's incredibly refreshing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Trying to see what else I wanted to ask you. This is just sort of so we were talking earlier about, you've been on book tour for kind of a while. What has been either the best or the weirdest interaction you've had with a reader since the book has come into the world?
Well, I've been getting a lot of direct messages from readers, and that's always really interesting. I haven't had any bad moments or anything, but I think this is one of my most favorite moments. I got a really great direct message from a 15-year-old girl. She is Indian, but she lives somewhere in the UK. So she's from Mumbai. And she wrote and said, I'm 15 years old and I go to school here, and I wanted to be in science, but the boys make it really hard to be in science at my school. And so I have a lot of decisions to make about my future. And I read your book. And after I read your book, I said, well, no, I'm going to stay in the sciences no matter what the boys say. And I'm going to be a chemist. And I thought, wow, that was just fantastic, because part of her message was about what was happening, to her in these classrooms, and, people talking over her, people taking her work, it's just like, oh. And then, I don't know, let's see, what has been the weirdest? I'll tell you, okay, this is the weirdest. All right. So I did not expect people to name their new dogs 6:30. And yeah, I got a direct message from a woman in Germany. And she said, oh gosh, really liked your book and so excited. In Germany, the dog is called Halb-7. So Halb-7 is 6:30. So so she said, so I'm getting this puppy and it's on hold, they're being weaned, but I called and I said, I want to reserve this dog and I'm going to name it Halb-7. And so the guy goes, okay, fine. And then the guy calls her back about 10 minutes later and he goes, I think you may have called before because we already have a puppy reserved under Halb-7.
Oh my God. Who knows how many beyond these two?
Yeah, I thought, oh wow, I never saw that coming. I saw somebody had a box that had a pair of 6:30 socks in them with a dog and a clock at 6:30.
Yeah. Wow, that they had made themselves, or where did they obtain that?
It came in one of, those boxes where they put in treats that go with your book. I've never gotten one.
Neither have I.
Yeah. So yeah, somebody sent me one, but I never, but somebody ordered it and it had the coffee with the actual chemical equation from the book. And then had a pair of socks for 6:30 that had the dog and the clock. And it had, there's all this stuff plus the book. The book was the least interesting thing. I know. Someone sent me that package.
Yeah.
But no, it's so cool.
That's very cool. Cool. I wonder how many 6:30s or whatever that translates to into many other languages there are wandering around the earth. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I did have one woman wrote and she said, I am naming my dog 3:15 because I already know he's only half as smart as 6:30.
Oh, I feel like that's sort of defeated.
No, do not do that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Hi, James.
Hey, that's so great. I love that's so much better than the number of kids who were born named Khaleesi or thing from Game of Thrones, right? This
Very much.
is purely positive, as the book is. As you're talking about, love. I should plug it here. It's got such a great cover. We
Oh,
can't
I've
not
got one
show
too.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh my gosh, you guys are doing better than me. I've got all these different editions over here from
fun.
different, and I don't have them all yet, but it's kind of fun to watch them come.
Yeah.
That's great. It reminds me, the conversation you're having reminds me about how, come Oscar time, the awards always go to this sort of turgid melodrama or the heavy biopic. But so you planned basically to write a comic novel from the start, which is sort of daring almost. I mean, not daring, maybe it's not like you're a rock climber or something, but you're not going to get a certain kind of attention probably. The book is doing very well, so you picked the right thing to do. But so how did that start?
Well, in copywriting, I was often asked to write speeches, and they'd want little, moments in the speech that were humorous. And then they wouldn't use them because, I don't know, they just wouldn't. But and I'm used to writing humor. I think humor is hard though, and I didn't know how hard it would be across an entire novel because, humor has to be very tight and short for it to work. And it also has to be surprising. So I had to kind of surprise myself. And then, you don't know if it's actually that funny. But my husband is my primary reader because he's very well read. And when he was reading it, I'd kind of watch from the back of the room. And if he went like this, then I know that I did something funny. Oh, no. Renee!
Too much time praising another dog. That's what it is.
Right.
Has gotten jealous.
But you're right. They really, I think that the more serious films usually get, the awards, and maybe they should, I don't know. But I think humor is hard. I just really wanted to do a good job of it. And to be honest, I wasn't sure that I had. And so, there's always a lot of self-doubt as a writer.
Well, hopefully the reception for this has assuaged some of that, at least.
A little bit, but I still worry.
That I guess that ties into questions that's popped up here a couple times from our audience. Are there plans to take the book to the screen?
Yes. It was bought by Apple TV and Aggregate Films last year, and they're starting to shoot this summer in LA. And it will be on Apple TV sometime in the summer of 2023. They hope, COVID willing, whatever else willing. So yeah, they're full speed ahead. And Brie Larson will be Elizabeth Zott.
Yeah, great. That's so often, even when there are plans, they're much more vague. Like someone has an option, and maybe 10 years from now we'll see something. But it's
well, that was the interesting thing. I have to credit my film agent for this, or suddenly I had a film agent. Someone had to tell me I had a film agent. But they started, Hollywood was reading at the same time that the auction was going on in the United States. And then there were a lot of offers of options to come in. I forget how many, it was like over 30. And suddenly I had a film agent, and he said, well, you know what, with this amount of interest, I'm going to make it a must produce order. And suddenly there were only 8 groups left. But they were still like, the Game of Thrones people, and, it's just the Mad Men people. It was really amazing to get to talk with these people in Hollywood and their excitement for the book. But it does mean they have to make it. So sure enough, they are making it. And they already have a costume designer and the production designer, set designers. So I think they're casting the dog, or they started casting the dog a couple weeks ago. So it'll be interesting to see, who plays 630. And I don't know any of the other actors yet. But, it all relies on everyone's schedule and everything like that. But yeah, they're full speed ahead. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, that's nice.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The other question that's popped up a couple times is what you are working on next. Are there already another book in the works, a sequel, or something completely different?
I wasn't right. I had no plans to write a sequel. I do have something else in the works that I'm really enthusiastic about, but I hate to talk about it because I know it's going to change. And so because I have to do my meandering writing, and so if I talk about it, I think if I get it done, then you'll read it and you'll go, well, that's weird. She never said anything about that it was on the moon, or whatever. So I'm not really talking about it much.
That's fair. Good. So spend the time actually writing the book rather than telling us about it. It'll work out better
All right.
for all of us.
Yeah.
Um,
That's my job.
Did you think of this as a historical work when you wrote it? Like, do you know what I mean?
God, I did not. No, and I was so surprised when someone said it's under historical fiction. I went, oh my God, I must be really old. This is under historical fiction. But then I realized, gosh, even a book written for the 90s is considered historical fiction. I didn't know that. That was another surprise. No, I put it in the 60s for two reasons. One was I needed reassurance that we had moved forward from the sexism, that we'd actually made progress. And, we have, but not enough. Yeah. And then the other reason I put it there was because that's when my mom was a mom. And for the very first time, I wanted to understand the limits that she lived under. And they were tough. And it gave me this newfound respect for her and all of her friends who, didn't have a lot of choice like we have. So I think that generation of women ended up raising a generation of feminists. So I'm grateful.
That's well put. That's very well put. I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to throw in here, Claire.
No,
Great.
no, I feel like I've interrogated Bonnie hard enough. No, this has been fascinating for me though. So thank you.
Yeah, good. No, I'm so glad you were here with us. It's been a super fun conversation, which is appropriate since it's a super fun book. I've so many comments. We've had comments in the chat here. I've had comments in the store and from people at other bookstores talking about what a strong personal response they've had to that. I mean, people say, oh, I really enjoyed this book, whatever. People say, I love this book and I love this character. So credit to you, Bonnie, for that.
Well, thank you. And it's always nice to hear that. I was not at all sure, honestly. Yeah. I had no idea it would get this kind of response.
Yeah, so far so good. And reminder, of course, please go buy the book, read the book, people. You get it,
or buy several copies. Yeah,
that's right. Why not? Order it through your local bookstore, through us, through Paulina Springs Books, through Country Bookshelf, somewhere else. And we look forward very much to seeing what both of you come up with next.
Thank you. Yeah, Claire, when's yours done?
Sometime in the next 2 years.
Oh, great. Okay, well,
that's pretty good.
So Lee will be busy.
Yes. We'll give her something to do.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure she doesn't have plenty already. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure she doesn't. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see all of you in the audience next time.
Thanks, James.
Yeah.
Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Bye.
Bye.